the stress coming to my body did not make my prefrontal cortex active. And then they saw something very remarkable, which is a robust activation of the PAG, which is part of the brain stem, that is the deepest part of the brain, the fight and flight, the survival, but also the area of the hormonal periaqueductal gray hemisphere, which is responsible for the activation of opioids. And we got an epidemic on opioids, isn't it? But we don't know how to tap in and to make these opioids work for us against, it's like pain killing, analgesia, natural ones, very strong inside of us. We lost the connection, but now it is here. And the other one is the euphoric hormones, the cannabinoids, endocannabinoid system. Both are there, and they saw me activating for the first time in medical science robustly into that area. That's why it did not only solve the stressor from not being cold, it was warm. And the professors, they had a difficult time putting more ice in the water because I was warming up the water. Whoa. And I was doing nothing. That is the power of our mind. And what I can do, anybody is able to do. So when people are depressed or bipolar or anxiety or fear or trauma or PTSD, it is stress and they cannot break the loop. I tell you, we found the key to break the loop. That's where I am right now with the science. And now this needs to be implemented for those in need. And there are many, many in need.
So that is so extraordinary. The fact, I'm so glad that you were doing a brain scan while you're doing that, because I imagine when I think about what you must be doing, I think about something being tense, something being hardened. And so when I've practiced your breathing, it's a very active, intense, drive. But hearing you talk about it as meditative, of tapping into the insular, of activating deeper regions of your brain and not the prefrontal cortex, that paints like this whole other emotional connection to have with what you're doing, which changes entirely how I approach what you're talking about, which is really interesting.
Another thing is they say we are doing right now, and we got it endorsed through the John W. Brick Mental Healthcare Foundation, 1.2 million to endorse this study on the DNA in San Francisco with the top researchers over there.
If you're changing DNA,
yes,
or if you have a mutation that allows you to do this.
DNA changes itself. It prolongs in cell activity, cell division, which is a telomeres. The condition of the telomeres is about longevity and the quality of life. If it is not attacked by inflamed transcription factors, then the genome expression is going to be just nice and right. And besides of that, the protective proteins around the cell are then, through the hormetic exercises or the breathing you just mentioned, together with the cold showers, it is hormetic
well, let's
stress.
Define hormetic for people.
Hormetic is like positive stress, conscious stress. Your neurology is inside that, and it connects with your body the way nature meant it to be. And in the primordial state of our cells, the cells should be protected by proteins. But because of our comfort zone behavior, they are inactive. And thus the inflammatory impulses through the transcription factors, just little assholes, who go into the cell and they begin to mess up the telomeres, the longevity, the cell division, the condition thereof, and we live shorter and better, so less, and we are becoming vulnerable for the wrong genome expressions, and that causes diseases.
Guys, this is really interesting. If this is really shaking down to hormesis, which said another way is a little bit of bad, does you a lot of good.
Yes.
And so you actually need something that stresses the system in a way that most people would think of as bad,
Yes.
but it actually ends up being good. And this is where I'm jarred in the best way possible with what you were saying about it being this meditative experience for you, because I think of going in ice as brutally painful, of requiring all of my discipline and desire to battle through. And I wouldn't have thought of it as being something that I have to relax into, of, you know, really sort of releasing, letting go, relaxing, almost removing myself from certainly removing myself from the suffering of the pain. But I'm curious, when you're doing this, and you've talked about dipping under the ice and going into this meditative state, and you've described it with these sound effects, which I always found really interesting. But when you're going into that, do you feel the pain and divorce yourself from the suffering? Or do you literally not feel any discomfort?
You feel anything, but you learn to let go. You follow the breath, and thus the hormonal system, the endocrine system, which we have shown in scientific research, is really active within your command. And with that comes the adrenaline, the epinephrine, the opiates, and the cannabinoids.
All right, now
They are very strong.
they're really strong painkillers, is what
Yes.
you mean, right?
Yes.
So that's interesting. So you're saying that you're actually killing the pain by tapping into that system because you've kicked off all this neuropharmacology, basically.
Yes.
Okay, that's super interesting.